Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, Perseverance Pioneers. I am John Zadzura, and this is the Perseverance Mindset Podcast. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome to our podcast and welcome to our mission. You've just stepped into the Perseverance Mindset Podcast, and we are thrilled to have you with us this evening. We're broadcasting live from our famous blog den here in our studio, where we confront big questions, dissect many points of view, many discussions, and many complex realities, and lean into challenges with grit, clarity, and purpose. Again, thank you for joining us today. And today we're going deep into the heart of something that's been happening for a long, long time. It's a global power struggle, a chess game, if you will, that's been quietly building for decades. We've been talking about the financial Cold War that the United States and China have recently taken on, but this is something that's been happening for many, many decades behind the scenes. We're stepping up to challenge what's happening with China in terms of trade and policy as of recently, but a struggle that isn't happening on a out in the open type of front. It's not something that's happening on a battlefield, at least not yet, but it is already reshaping our economy, your job, your freedoms, and your future. That's why we want to talk about it here with all of our Perseverance Pioneers here on the Perseverance Mindset Podcast. This is the financial Cold War we've been talking about in previous episodes, and today we're uncovering one of its deepest, most calculated truths, and that is leader Xi Jinping has been preparing for this moment for his entire life. I know that's all what you're saying. Be like, John, I don't know the history of this guy. He just leads China. He's been in power for a long time. So let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered why, just why, can manufacturing slowly just disappear almost overnight, instantaneously? Just thinking like, hey, our parents, relatives, family members had jobs, good pay, and they just disappeared overnight. Have you asked why your tech devices are filled with components made in, of course, China, as well as other places, but the biggest competitor and rival for us is China? Have you questioned why TikTok, that's right, which we have a large following on, is the most powerful media influence on American youth today? Which we're going to get into that. Don't turn the dial, don't turn the station. We're going to get into that. Have you noticed how many nations are now aligning themselves with Beijing, building roads, infrastructure, ports, and pipelines, not for freedom, but for favor? You honestly think China's doing these things for the good of the world? Not for a moment. These aren't just coincidences. These are the fingerprints of a long, silent chess game in global policy. It's a chess match being played by a leader who believes in his heart, in his mind, in his soul, his being, that history is on his side and that America's best days are behind us, not on our watch, not even for a second. But here at the Perseverance Mindset Podcast, we're not interested in all that backstory. We're not interested in just mindless discussions or just passively watching history unfold in front of us. We're here to learn from history, to respond to it with wisdom, not fear, simply strategy, not sound bites, but courage, not exactly in comfort. So today, our episode will walk you through many of the things we're discussing, such as President Xi Jinping's rise and how his family's suffering during Mao's purges of citizens forged a hard-line nationalist mindset that controls China, that is at the head of the Chinese government today. So how does China's state-controlled economy really factor into everything we're talking about here? And tech sectors were built not to just compete, but to replace U.S. power abroad. And these are the things we're going to be discussing today. Why this isn't just about tariffs, the financial Cold War, or trade. It's simply about the survival of ideologies, freedom versus control, innovation versus manipulation. That's right. And what it means for you as a citizen, as a leader, someone who still believes in America's promise and the goodness of that shining city on a hill. So I'll be asking you questions throughout this episode, real questions, the kind of questions that you don't have easy answers to, but that deserve your voice and your dedicated independence. So grab a notebook, share this episode with a friend that might like this content. And if something I say lights a fire inside of you, post it, tag us, hashtag us at Perseverance Mindset Podcast JPZ. And let's create a ripple effect of engaged perseverance pioneers, informed, strong citizens. Because here's the truth. You can put any spin on it you want. You can't preserve through a Cold War you don't even realize that you're already in. Whether we realize it over the decades or not, we are in it. And we're at the forefront of it today. So let's get into it. So let's start at the very beginning, not with policy papers or press conferences, but with a boy named Xi Jinping. Born in 1953, he was the son of a revolutionary hero. His father was one of the Mao Zedong closest allies. But as China spiraled into political upheaval, political chaos during the Cultural Revolution, his family went from elite to enemy like that. His father was purged, publicly humiliated, and imprisoned. And his father, just a teenager, was sent to the countryside to live in a cave and shovel manure and endure backbreaking labor. These are the types of things that go on in China. Think about that. One day you're at the top official of the highest government in the land at the time. The next you're a political exile. Now let me ask you, anybody listening, what does that kind of betrayal do to a young mind? What does that kind of shape in the future of a person? What does that kind of humiliation forges a person like that? It didn't break him. It hardened him. It made him become who he is today. He even said himself, people who have little experience of power or struggle tend to be naive. Again, we're talking about the head of the CCP. We're talking about the head of China. This person is, by all accounts, a communist. This person is, by all accounts, someone that is doing horrific things to his people. He wasn't going to be naive. He was going to rise, and not just rise with somebody of President Xi Jinping's background. He was going to endure, he was going to strategize, and he was going to return. This wasn't just about power. It was about restoring what he saw as China's rightful place in the world, frankly. Case in point, and ensuring it could never again be humiliated by the West. When he took power in 2012, he brought with him not just a political authority, not an ideology, but a personal vendetta wrapped in nationalist ambitions. He viewed the United States not as a partner, but as a threat, and one that would use freedom and capitalism and weaponize those tools of dominance against China. Here's a chilling quote from him in 2013. You can't make quotes like this up, and we're not misquoting here. If we will, we'll correct it. But spoken privately to his own party leaders, the West has used economic openness to subvert and purposely divide us. They want to see China collapse, frankly. Now ask yourself this. If you believe your enemy wanted to destroy your country, your nation, your very way of life, wouldn't you prepare? Wouldn't you build your economy, your military, your ideology into a fortress to protect your nation, to protect the homeland? And that's exactly what President Xi Jinping has been doing. He's been doing it for a long time. He centralized power in ways China hasn't seen since Mao. Sound familiar? He crushed dissent, he silenced rivals, and he began laying the bricks of an alternative global order. Combat the United States, of course. One where the Chinese Communist Party writes the rules, sets the terms, and of course controls the outcomes. You can set the rules, you can set the tones, but unless you control the outcome, you don't really go far, do you? So think about what that means when a leader plans not just for the next election, but for the next 50 to 100 years. That's the long game. That's thinking outside the box. That's thinking exactly the type of thinking you should be thinking about. And where it gets real for us as Americans, how many American leaders are thinking, quite frankly, 50 years ahead. Let's pause for a minute. Let's give a chance. But how many of our institutions are designed to endure a generational rivalry? Are we prepped to compete with a nation that has so much centralized power that has made strategic patience its superpower? Write this down. Get a pen, get a marker, get a paper, whatever you need to write. Power without patience collapses. Patience without power concedes. But here's the thing. America has something China will never will. Liberty, innovation, faith, and most of all, a free people with unshakable American grit and spirit. There's no other way around it. None. We've been underestimated before in many of our conflicts, from the shores of Normandy to the moon landing to Silicon Valley's rise. America shines through its brightest when the stakes are at the utmost highest, when people are doubting us constantly. So what we're also going to talk about and look at is how President Xi transformed China's economy into a strategic weapon, and why this matters to America, and why America must rethink the way it engages with a regime that plays entirely by its own rules and forces those rules on the global world order. So stick with me. We're going to discuss this. So let's be clear on something. China didn't rise through innovation alone. It rose by using America's own rules against us, the very nation that helped establish and bring it into the state it's currently in, whether you're talking technology, when you're talking about global markets, from currency manipulation to state subsidized mega corporations, just the way it is, from intellectual property theft. How many businesses know about that are listening to this podcast? To forced technology transfers. China built an economy designed not to just grow, but to control. And it wasn't about coexisting, learning to coexistence. That's nonsense. It was about global dominance. And that is the essence of the policy plan of China. They offer cheap labor and attractive markets. But behind that handshake were deals that were steel jaws of control. American companies were lured in only to be copied, exploited, and locked out of their own businesses that they helped create. Ask yourself, why does nearly every pharmaceutical ingredient and smartphone, of course, I have one myself, I'm guilty of it, and smartphone, all those components trace back to China? Why do American farmers rely on seed tech or chemical additives manufactured in Shanghai or Wuhan? Why are so many global supply chains hostage to the decision of the Chinese Communist Party, that regime? Because it was all part of the plan, and no one was paying attention while we were doing all this stuff with NAFTA and offshoring jobs, and companies made their millions. President Xi knew economics was leverage, was more powerful than missiles. If he could make the world need China, be dependent on China for goods, for credit, for trade, then he could bend nations at their will without even firing a shot. That's why we've been discussing this financial Cold War that's been raging. Now look at the Belt and Road Initiative. $1 trillion infrastructure loans to developing countries. Admirable. But is it really admirable when you know that they're never going to get paid back? So there's a debt. There's a debt. Giving China control over ports, railroads, governments. All this adds up to that 100-year plan, that vision. That's not capitalism. That's coercion. Now, how does America respond to everything that President Xi Jinping's been doing? We fight now with fear, but with freedom, not by mimicking their control and how they run their business and their government, but by unleashing our innovation, by returning manufacturing to this country, to American soil, by supporting small businesses and investing in the United States of America, investing in tech that aligns with our values and what we want to see built right here at home. And if we want to win this financial Cold War, we must rebuild our economy that's both free and resilient, that rewards independence, rewards the independence over dependence on China. So I ask you, what are you doing to support this effort? What are you doing? American-made products? Are you buying American-made products? Are you investing in companies that reflect your values, American values? Are you teaching your kids where their clothes, phones, or food comes from? We're probably past the point of where this discussion should be happening. It should be happening like everything else at the dinner table. The fight is here, and the battleground is your wallet. Let's just say that. And that's the truth. So as we get more into this episode of breaking down this financial Cold War, giving you the background on Xi Jinping and his rise, let's talk tech, because everybody's talking about tech. It's the hottest topic out there since sliced bread. It's the hottest topic since some of the first Coca-Colas came out. Because the next front in this financial Cold War, it's not a battlefield. Let's just put that out there. It's not a battlefield. Anybody talking about a battlefield, they're not paying attention. The point of this isn't the next step for this in the battlefield. It's your phone, your data, your future. China has poured billions into, you guessed it, artificial intelligence, facial recognition, G domination, quantum computing, but it's not for innovation's sake. Let's just get that out of the way. It's for control. Someone that controls a product and has the most knowledge gains the most over its competitors. In President Xi Jinping's China, technology is not a tool for freedom. It's a mechanic. It's a way to surveil, a way to censor and manipulate its citizens. Let me ask you, why is TikTok allowed to dominate American culture while U.S. apps are banned, you guessed it, in China? Why are our kids dancing to algorithms programmed by a foreign government? Doesn't sound suspicious? Why do American tech giants chase profits in China, right, while ignoring the values that made them rich and powerful here in the freest, most prosperous nation on earth? China's model of technology is techno-totalitarianism. This is spreading. Cameras on every street corner, social credit scores, real-time biometric tracking. This is straight out of George Orwell. Made real, in real time. But here's the American answer. Open source. Open source innovation, creativity, and freedom. That's how we'll fight back against China. That's how we'll win this financial Cold War. Our tech revolution was born in garages, in coffee shops, with free minds and free markets. Silicon Valley didn't rise because of a 5-year plan. It rose because of the innovation and the Constitution, because of liberty, giving individuals to create such things in this great country that we live. We must protect that. We must hold our tech, own our tech, and we must hold our tech leaders accountable. Demand that American companies stop selling out to tyranny for short-term gain and financial gain, most of all. We must raise a generation that doesn't just use technology, but questions it, builds it, and uses it with integrity and dignity. This financial Cold War, and the digital Cold War, we might like to add, is on, and the keyboard is mightier than the sword. No pun intended. The keyboard is mightier than the sword. So we want to talk a little bit more about it. What the military might of both nations between the United States and China. I know we were saying it wouldn't resort to the battlefield, but we can't talk about this financial Cold War strategy, first of all, without facing the hard military truth. China is building the world's largest navy. They're not building it. They already have it. They are expanding to airfields in the South China Sea, militarizing artificial islands, and threatening Taiwan with daily flyovers, which is completely a violation of law. This isn't saber rattling. This is preparation. President Xi's military doctrine is based on area denial. Keep the U.S. Navy out, control regional trade, and isolate the allies. We've seen this playbook before. The goal, push America out of Asia once and for all. Break those alliances, replace our leadership. But here's what they can't really succeed in. Here's what they can't duplicate. The bravery of our troops, our American warfighters, and the legacy of D-Day. The backbone of U.S. veterans, the global network of allies forged in shared blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Ask yourself, would you rather live under a regime, to be quite frank, that surveils its citizens, one that protests speech, faith, and freedom? So if we're serious about winning this financial Cold War, and if we're serious about peace, we must be serious about critical deterrence. And that means rebuilding the military that we know and love. Not to where China has the biggest military and navy, but we need to regrow our way of life. We need to grow our military back, honoring our service members, supporting our veterans, strengthening alliances from the Pacific And this includes NATO, yes, as they're contributing more as of recently. In other words, peace through strength. We've done it before, and we must do it again. There's nothing that we can do without our allies. There's nothing that our allies cannot do without us. So here's what we have to get in. Here's where it gets real. So we do have an advantage, and that's the American advantage. So where do we go from here? You're just listening to this podcast for the first time. You're like, John, I work a job. I have a family. Well, what can we do? We face a rival that thinks in decades, while many of our leaders think in election cycles. Wrong way to win a financial Cold War. We face a regime that believes in absolute control, while we believe in the God-given right for all men to be free of life, liberty, and that pursuit of happiness, which is in our founding documents. This isn't just about China. It's about us as a nation and about us as a people. Do we still believe in American exceptionalism, which has come under fire over the past number of years? Do we believe in personal responsibility, in building things that last instead of we just want cheap stuff? Because here's the truth. We don't need to become like China to compete with China. That's a failing strategy. We need to become more American, simply put, more resilient, more unified, more bold, more pursuing our values. In this financial Cold War, it isn't fought in just boardrooms or ballot boxes. It's fought in every home in the country. It's fought in the classrooms. It's fought in the small businesses. It's fought in the community. It's fought in the community centers. And conversations like this one right now that we're engaging in. What can you do to support American workers, small businesses? Challenge your kids to create, not to just consume, to think outside the box, to demand accountability from our elected officials. Speak truth, live free, and stay strong, most importantly. So China's red dragon is breathing, but the American eagle still soars. And all of us here at the Perseverance Mindset Podcast know that we will be victorious in the end. And as long as there are patriots willing to preserve and fight for America, America will remain that shining city on a hill, and we will never fail. This is the Perseverance Mindset Podcast, and we don't quit when the pressure or hard times come. We rise, we endure, and quite frankly, we win. This is John Zedzura signing off. Thank you, and have a great night.